Hey you guys, today we're going to be doing the first step of what will become this painting, which is a Bengal cat. And I got this reference photo from someone on Instagram, Brooklyn Bengal. So I will put her little handle here. If you want to go check out all her beautiful pictures, I would encourage you to do so. So I am making this project available to the public, which usually this would just be a Patreon tutorial. There will be about 6 to 7 more video tutorials coming. So if you're interested in following along, come paint with me. I think it would be so fun. So share your progress on Rachel's watercolor workshop, and you can upload how you're doing with the painting there. So to get started, go to my Patreon page. I'll link it below. Find the first post that is already up there and download the tracing. And you can download the tracing, print it out to whatever size you want to do. I would suggest at least 8 by 10 or 11 by 14. This is an 11 by 14 that I've done. And then I had to tape 2 different pieces of paper together to get an 11 by 14 size. So I printed out the top of the image on my printer, and then I printed out the bottom of the image on another 8.5 by 11 piece of paper on my cheap printer, and tape them together with Scotch tape, put them on the window, put my watercolor paper over the tracing, and then use a pencil to trace. Oh, and another tip, use a pencil that is at least a 2, because if you use anything softer, the lead will granulate and it'll get into your paint and it'll make your paint colors muddy. So don't use those soft drawing pencils. Okay, let's get started with some masking. Get my liner brush, an old one that I don't care as much about. I'm not going to use my Simply Simmons. I'm just going to use an old liner brush like so. And I swished it in my water, got it nice and wet, and then swished it around on my Dial soap here that is well loved and used. And I'm gonna dip directly into my masking, and here we go. I'm going to mask along his profile. This is going to be the main point of interest. So I just want to make sure this masking is correct. Putting tiny little wispies of fur along the bottom of his chin. And he's got, let's put these wispies here. I'm going to turn my paper so I can get these nice and refined. Very light touch there for the whiskers that are coming out right here. And then I'm going to just put a highlight around this ear. The more refined you can get your masking and the more delicate your lines, the better it's going to be. Now he's got wispies in his ear. So as delicately as possible with your liner brush, let's put those in. Just really, it's like they're a millimeter wide. They're very delicate little hairs. And I'm painting by a big natural light window, so that's helping me, but try to do this somewhere where you get some good light, and just remember that the more refined you can get your edges with your masking, the better. Graceful curves of his ears right in here. I'm going to rinse out my brush, get it re-moistened, get a good bit of water in it, swish it around on my soap, and dip back into my masking. I'm just wanting to make sure that, let me see if I can zoom in for you guys what I'm doing. It's hard to see what I'm doing because my masking is a yellow color, a white yellow color. So just look carefully at your reference photo. Can you see my masking marks? I'm just connecting all these white areas that are in the reference, the areas of white. We may decide to tone down some of these areas. Gonna put a highlight in his eye. I will paint around his eye, so I'm not going to worry about anything but the highlight for now. And some little wispies through here, and then his whiskers, of course, I'm gonna turn my paper so that I can do a nice arc with my wrist and get a nice, as nice of angle as I can. Get plenty of masking on my brush and refine the ends. If you get a glop of masking on the end of your brush and you get a glop at the end of the whisker, this is the time to smooth that out as much as possible. The more you refined you can get the whiskers, the more elegant your painting is going to be. No pressure. Yeah. So, now I'm just going to put some wispies along his side of his coat here. And little wispies all along the profile side of his hindquarters. And then along his shoulder here, there's also a highlight where his shoulder comes out. So I'm going to paint along in there and all the way down his leg. The main thing is you want to get some wispies going out into his dark fur that the wispies rub up against. And the good thing about masking is if we decide it's too much white later, we can paint over it, scrub it, soften it. I'm trying to keep my shapes that I create with my masking as irregular as possible to make it look more realistic. Sometimes you want to make it even more irregular than the reference photo just to add a bit of realism, because in reality there is a lot more variety in angles. You want more variety in angles than maybe in your reference photo, because steeper angles or more curved lines are more interesting than straight lines. So you want to kind of play that up. I'm going to paint along the tops of each of his paws. This is going to end up being our jewelry. All right, I'm going to rinse out my brush. I don't want my masking to dry too much, and re-soaping my brush, getting it all nice and fresh and moistened, just to protect the bristles of my brush. Okay, then its tail right here has a light stripe, and it's really catching the light and creating a furry edge there. And there's another stripe here that I'm going to put in. Some of this isn't in the tracing. I'm just looking at my reference photo and deciding where I want some details. It's got a little bit of wispies along this back edge of his leg. It's almost like he's lit from behind, but not too much. Don't want to overdo it. And I think think I left out his haunch in the, so he's got a haunch here that kind of comes down. And then, okay, so I didn't get that haunch in. I'll probably add it to, actually it is in the tracing, but I just didn't trace it. I forgot to trace it onto my paper, so there you go. All right. And he's got all these pretty little furs. Just tiny little hairs getting highlighted throughout his fur, which I think is really pretty. Put a highlight right in there along the edge of his foot there. For the purposes of this video, I want to show you guys what the masking looks like after I got all the color on. And you can see right here that I didn't get my masking marks refined enough. So I wanted to show you guys as an example of what it will look like if you get like a blunt end, like right against here is kind of a blunt end, and that's going to need a lot more scrubbing than, say, you can see that this little line is very nice and refined. It won't need hardly any scrubbing because it's already nice and refined, and I used a really nice light touch on it. And then you can see this whisker has a weird kind of curve. If I would have noticed that when I put the masking on, then that would have saved me some headaches. So just keep in mind that you will be able to see every tiny little detail mistake you make from putting the masking on too sloppily. So try to really do a good job when you put your masking on. And I can tell you that I put so much masking on this painting, unlike I typically do. I was kind of getting tired at the end, and you can tell this is the last bit of masking I put on because it's pretty crappy. Oh, Kitty, thank you for the licks. Do you want to say hi, Kitty? Say hi, Kitty. Do you want to say hi, Parker? Say hi.